The names aren't important, but the story is. It was Christmas Eve. Lydia was newly divorced. Her husband had decided he wanted a 20-something college student with bleached hair, size 2. Lydia was 43, mother of 2, and she couldn't compete. Lydia was driving in a beat-up Toyota with her 2 kids in back, and the car was loaded with baggage, aimed toward Wisconsin, where her people were from. She was somewhere around central Kansas when the blowout happened. It was awful. The loud popping noise of a tire, the loss of steering power. She muscled the vehicle to the snowy shoulder, and she wondered what in the HE11 she was going to do. Her oldest, Eric, was entertaining his 5-year-old sister, Lainey, in the back seat. "What's wrong?" he said. The car came to a wobbling stop, and Mom was already pressing her head against the steering wheel and weeping. The spare tire was beneath 3 metric tons of crap she had packed in her car, and she had never changed a tire in her life. The rural highway was empty, and there were no cars passing them by on Christmas Eve. Christmas Eve in the country is a quiet affair. She said, "We're going to have to change a tire, kids." "Okay," said Eric, who was a former Boy Scout. He not only knew how to change a tire, but he knew how to give mouth to mouth. He was also the kid who earned his wood carving, carpentry, and survival badges in Boy Scouts. No big deal for Eric. Eric was getting luggage out of the trunk when the truck came. It swerved, and he never saw it. The lights of the Toyota were off, and in hindsight, this was a big mistake on Lydia's part, turning her lights off on a rural highway. They heard the screech of the truck tires, and they heard the sound of a boy screaming. The impact, he was thrown a long way, and the driver of the truck hadn't seen the car. Eric had not seen the truck, and when the EMTs got to the boy, he was barely breathing, and he was amazingly still responsive. They took him to the hospital, and he spent his Christmas in the ICU. Doctors did not give a lot of hope, and Lydia was a wreck. She blamed herself. She was perhaps at the lowest place she had ever been in her life. On Christmas night, she sat before the hospital, outside the sliding doors, smoking a menthol light, and she asked heaven for some kind of miracle. She wasn't the praying kind. She didn't really believe anything would help her or even hear her. Nothing had saved her marriage. Nothing had worked in the past for any of her problems. "But if you're up there, God," she said, "help my unbelief." She finished the prayer between puffs of her cigarette. It wasn't but a few moments later that a man came waltzing into the ICU. Nobody saw him but Lydia. He was tall and lean and bearded, long hair. Maybe he was an employee or a medical staffer or a janitor, maybe just some guy with a family member in the ER. The man walked into ICU easily, as though nobody could see him. The stranger stopped into Eric's room and asked how the boy was feeling. Lydia remembers that she looked at him and said, "I'm scared. I'm scared my son's going to die." The man looked right at her and he said, "He's not going to die." "How do you know?" she said. He said, "Because this is what I do." She said, "Are you a doctor?" He smiled and said, "Sort of." He placed his hand on Eric's body and he said, "Everything's going to be all right. He's going to hurt for a while, but your boy will be okay." Eric regained consciousness. His heart monitor started beeping again. The boy made a full recovery. Today, that kid is a commercial engineer. He has 3 kids of his own, a nice family, a backyard swing set, a retirement plan. The lucky guy. And even to this day, when his mama tells this story, and people ask who the stranger was, she answers the same way she did that night, when even medical professionals didn't know how a boy made such a recovery. She says, "The man told me his name wasn't important.